Hey, welcome everyone to this episode of the Graybeard Talks Geospatial. I'm Bruce Buxton, I'm the Graybeard, and as you know, I show up here every Thursday afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, to have a conversation with people from my team at Critigen or other industry leaders who are doing things with GIS implementation, integration, and innovation. And I'm glad to have you along today. Thanks for coming, and I hope you find value in this. I'm ready to welcome my guest today. My guest today is Dennis Beck, and Dennis is the president and the CEO of Spatial Business Systems. Maybe you can say hi, Dennis.
Hello, everyone. Welcome today, and Bruce, thanks for having me on. Appreciate the chat with you today.
So excited to have you on. You know, we had a good prep call, and I love what you're doing. I love the things that that your company stands for. So, you know, I talk about in most of my content on LinkedIn and in this geospatial, the GIS, the Graybeard Talks Geospatial. Sorry, get a little tongue tied there. I talk about GIS integration, implementation, innovation, and you guys fall right in that space. So I really want to have a good conversation with you today. Where are you calling in from today, Dennis?
I'm actually at the company headquarters. It's right in Old Town, Littleton, Colorado. So that's where we're from. That's where we're based.
Is Littleton, I'm so unfamiliar with the map of Denver. Is Littleton on the north side or the south side?
It's kind of a southwest suburb. So as you get a little closer towards the foothills and such.
Highland Ranch area?
Yeah, a little north and a little west of Highlands Ranch. So that's the general area where we are.
Excellent.
This is an old community. We actually bought an old house that was built in 1926. It was the mayor's house at the time, and we've remodeled it and made it kind of a fun place to work, particularly in this COVID kind of time, you know, where people bounce in and have meetings and then leave and such. So yeah, we just kind of moved in here over the last couple of months.
Yeah, well, someday, you know, I'll have to have a conversation about what that's like to move into a new building and then have everybody have to work from home. It's kind of a funny thought, right?
Oh, it is. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to encourage everyone who's listening in today. It really will help us to get some reach from LinkedIn. We'll push this out to other people. If I can get everybody to put a comment in the comment section, just put in there where you're watching from. That way, that'll kind of boost the algorithm to say, "Hey, this is interesting to people," so I'll push it out. So we want to hack the algorithm a little bit and make sure that you put a comment where you're calling from, and that'll also give Dennis and I an opportunity to know who we're talking to. Last week, if you heard my conversation with Shane Hennessy, one of the problems that I had in that conversation is I had a few technical difficulties, and I was on the road, and I was using my phone, and you know, lots of excuses. But I never got to interacting with the listeners or with the audience, which I think is a real bad faux pas. So please forgive me for that last week. And I'll try and do better this week. Dennis is someone that can carry the conversation on his own, so I can move my attention to my other screen from time to time and see who's watching. So thanks. So far, we've got Keith Russell, we've got Jeff Haight, got Tom Eggenberger, not Mike, but his son Tom from San Luis Obispo. Thanks for coming, Tom. I hope Thomas, I call my son Thomas too. Hopefully we have something of value to offer to you. So Dennis, really quickly, we work with you in a couple different places right now, but I think we're finding that our ability to bring GIS into critical business systems fits pretty seamlessly into the needs that you have with graphical work design. And I want to touch on that today, but before we go down that road, I'd love to know a little bit about the origin story of Spatial Business Systems. Could you maybe give us a little bit of idea of where you come from, how long you've been around, just the medium version story of that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we founded the company almost 20 years ago now. It was 2002, and both my co-founder Andy Street and I were at GE, and we were doing some really interesting work, kind of taking a lot of the utility things we had done to the next level. And we got involved with some really interesting critical infrastructure things as it related to information security. And it was things that at the time GE really wasn't interested in us working with. So we left, started to do some things with critical infrastructure, particularly supporting the federal government. And as we started to work on that, we started to do a lot of work with data interoperability, a very fast movement of data between different systems. And I'm talking spatial information, obviously, that's what we're all about here. Yeah. And as that came along, we realized there was a lot of applicability to the markets that we had worked with for most of our career, which is utilities. So we developed some pretty powerful integration tools. And as over the years, we've just really continued to extend those. And then, about 10 years ago, we started to get really close working with Autodesk and taking some of these concepts around just moving spatial data between different systems and remodeling it to the CAD to geospatial interoperability. And that kind of culminated about 5 years ago when we entered a strategic relationship with Autodesk, and we acquired their utility-specific portfolio of applications. So we added a substation design software, which is really very cool 3D modeling, physical modeling of substations, along with distribution design, which is our AUD product. And then to complement that, we also have the productized our products, our IP that we originally created to tie all those systems to traditional utility applications like ERP and GIS and mobile solutions, analysis tools, and that's our utility data hub. So we kind of started as a system, moved on to really very much a product-focused company now.
Excellent. And you and I talked a little bit about the idea that maybe there's some people that are watching maybe today that don't really understand the origins of the term graphical work design, right? GWD, graphical work design. GWD. I wonder if you might be able to take a minute and just kind of explain the origins of that and what does that entail?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And graphical work design, obviously is, performing those designs graphically of the infrastructure changes that are needed to, modernize, to update, to expand infrastructure. And a lot of things started to happen, particularly when I got really active in GIS in the mid-90s, to start incorporating those kinds of tools into the geospatial environment, because you've got the maps, you've got the infrastructure, all those kinds of things. And so we did a lot of work in my career to start developing specific tools for that. And it's really interesting because, I have been involved with that term graphical work design, but I really don't like that term so much anymore now.
Okay, all right.
I just really think it has to be a lot more than that to be effective. I mean, a lot of those systems we did, they were good. They did a lot of powerful things. But now looking back on them historically, they didn't work nearly as well as we thought they were going to work. And so we've done a lot of things. We're really trying to change a lot of the older paradigms that are out there. So I kind of try not to use the word graphical work design anymore. So.
That's interesting. That's cool. So what are the old paradigms that you have changed? Tell me, expand on that thought. You said you changed some old paradigms.
Absolutely. So when we would perform design within a geospatial environment, the idea was, hey, I'm working in a GIS, I'm working with graphics, and I'm going to go ahead and generate those graphics in the GIS, create work prints so that the crews can go ahead and build those items. And as we've started to work with those systems and look back at historically what they did, I mean, our goal was to stop organizations from having to redraw their systems, having to do re-estimating, having it touch many different organizations. And we found a lot of that wasn't really accomplished because the needs for the design and the needs for GIS are really pretty different. The business requirements are different. Design, you need lots of detail, lots of precision accuracy of where you want to put something in the ground and get it built so it's properly installed, it's safe, maintainable. And for GIS, you really want to convey geographic information. A lot of times to support operations, you need to send a crew out at 2 a.m. to flip a switch or turn a valve or something like that, and their requirements are really different. And so a lot's really changed. And as technology has marched on, it's put us in a nice position where we can address a lot of those business requirements much more effectively now than we could, 15 years ago.
So what I hear you saying is that the desire always was just to have a one-to-one relationship between the design itself and what the GIS represents in the field, but you recognize that those things are very different tools, right? Situational awareness for the GIS, and the capability to build off the plan for the CAD. But how do you bridge that gap? That's the interesting thing to me, is like, how do you bridge the gap in philosophy as well as in just real terms, software wise? What do you do?
Yeah, software wise, then in reality of users wanting to adopt and to change, which is always the biggest thing ever.
Absolutely.
But I think there are several things to that. GIS started to really develop from cartographic mapping representations to intelligent models, and that's something that really started to develop in the 90s throughout the 2000s. And if you look at the complex things you can model in GIS, it's really pretty exciting. CAD in its own way started to move along similarly and start to develop intelligent models rather than points and lines and symbols and all those things. And so as we've been working more and more on the CAD side, we've been able to take advantage of building models in CAD that essentially mirror what's in GIS, but they're able to still have all those advantages of the ad hoc, free-form design nature of CAD, and of course all the user experience of CAD. There are hundreds of thousands of people trained in it every year, so that we could though readily integrate with GIS. And there's a lot of tricky stuff underneath that because they are still fundamentally different. But you have to try to accommodate the best of both organizations.
I'm sorry, I walked on you there. I apologize. I asserted in my LinkedIn invitation, I asserted that there's this chasm between the design workflow and GIS. Maybe that might have been a little bit hyperbole, but nonetheless, what makes that tricky? What makes that integration, that GIS and digital design workflow? What makes that tricky?
Yeah, well, by the way, I like to refer to it as intelligent design.
Intelligent design. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Intelligent design, and what makes that tricky is that, again, the data has so many different uses. So you have different, even though it's both geographic in nature, you have different layouts. You really need to augment a design with a lot more information. For example, engineering properties and all kinds of detailed information. If you are looking at gas lines, you may want traceability information, so you know where your material came from. That ultimately has to get filtered in between that design, construction, as-built cycle. So there's a lot more information that gets carried along, and the information gets used differently by different organizations. So we have had a strong background in data transformation. We are a partner of a great company called Safe Software. We have been ever since we started the company. So we've always done a lot of work with data transformation, network data transformation. And so there's a lot that goes on to make that experience between design and GIS as seamless as possible. So there's that technical aspect of transforming data, presenting it differently, but then there's that different business change. The designers are generating revenue for the utility. They're supporting the front lines of hey, I need my line extension or whatever else is done. They have to just process that information and get those designs out as fast as possible. The GIS organization's working on a whole different set of things in terms of what they're doing. And that's changing too, obviously, with advanced networks and the grid and everything else. But they are just working marching to different orders.
So it sounds like there's more than just a technical challenge there. There's also a social challenge within the organizations to try and bridge that gap as well.
Yes, there certainly is. So again, just different user communities, different profiles, a lot of engineering facing safety related things on the design side. You've got these professional engineers that have a lot of responsibility and liability. And they will be thinking about that way all the time.
Yeah, that sounds like it. So I'm interested too in your customer experience, like the folks that you're working with. Do you have any of those transformation stories where you have been involved in integrating the intelligent design workflow together with GIS and how that has paid off for an organization?
Yeah, there are all kinds of them. It's the fun part of the work, really, to go do something and see the kinds of results our clients get. And some of them are kind of funny. We almost don't like to publicize them because they sound unreal. We had an organization that was sharing their productivity story, and it was 80% productivity change over the way they were doing things. And it was like, really? We started to question them. Are you really getting this much benefit from it? And they went through the different stages of the workflow, how they started, how they had to gather information, how they ultimately had to redraw information. And yeah, their productivity was like 80%, as in they shaved 80% off. They didn't shave 20% off. We find most organizations can improve their productivity 20% or more, but there are whole different areas where they can get productivity. It's just amazing. So,
Is the 80% in the redrawing, or tell me where that 80% is? Well, and I'm sure it's not 80% in all cases, but
yeah.
that big ROI, where does that come from when you integrate those two workflows?
It comes from a lot of small things, which is kind of a neat thing about it. So it comes from gathering information up front, and that can be a pretty big deal. And that could be, accessing records. And so we do a lot of work to make the geospatial data available, transformed for the designers, so they don't even have to know what a GIS is. So that's a big thing up front. We try to keep designers out of other systems. So, the designers typically would have to go to their SAP system, go find the work order, copy down information, put it into their design tool. And that's all automated. So they don't really have to know they're even working in SAP. In fact, we've had some designers where they've changed ERP systems on them and they didn't know. And that's from a change management standpoint, a really big thing, but also just from having to go from system to system, write things down, they could get it wrong. That's another aspect. Integrating analysis is a really big deal. So when engineers design, they have to do, either calculations or verify standards, those kinds of things. So that all gets automated, and they don't have to, again, go to multiple systems to do that. Not that we do all that, but we have the ability to go to those external systems and do that external validation. So as you just go through the whole cycle of the design process, there's a lot of changes that happen there. And then getting the data back to the GIS, getting it back with quality on a timely basis is the other trick. So we present that information back on the geospatial side. We have some really unique approaches to doing that. And I know when we've done some time tests, that whole redrawing thing can go down, by a multiple, as opposed to taking, it's not 20% or whatever, it could be 10 times faster. So that's a real key area. Again, that takes some change management, that takes some organizations understanding their roles and providing the information in a manner that it's consumable. But it's all, with what we can do with technology today, that's all very effective things.
Yeah, I imagine that's that could be kind of a difficult or unreal conversation to have with someone. If they're asking you, you're going to come in and you're going to implement this, then where are our savings? And boy, you can go through and poke a lot of holes in their processes, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely can. And what's always surprised me is to see, and I've been doing this a long time. The beard's, it's the white beard. Sorry, it's not the gray beard for me.
Well, hey now, let's call it what it is. All right.
Yeah. But 20, 30 years ago, when it's been over 30 years ago, actually, since I've been doing this, that was the whole idea, was not to have to redraw and to do all these things. And we're always amazed. We go to so many organizations that aren't just redrawing once or twice, it can be 3 or 4 times. when they're really trying to change the way they're doing their business, yet it's tricky because they have old ways of doing it, different systems they want to feed, different standards they want to maintain. And it's a pretty exciting thing to see that we're able to start making changes in that area now.
That is really exciting, and I'm sure that it's transformational for an organization, for the way people do their work. So Danny, thanks for joining us. Danny says what Dennis is outlining is a classic persona problem, different personas with different goals, KPIs, utilizing systems being measured in different ways. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think, Danny, you hit that spot on. And these organizations have different things they want to do. And quite frankly, we find organizations that don't want to do this also. For whatever reasons, they're scared of the productivity increases they can get. It changes their organizations, changes their roles. So there's a little bit of fear of the unknown and fear of change that we also have to accommodate, which has to be part of any good change management initiative.
Well, that's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me. I guess, there's certain parts of the country where the GIS analysts or, the drafters, they're all union people. I imagine that those kinds of changes would really kind of grate in the wrong place. Yeah,
they do, particularly when we look at like municipal clients and such. They're probably the most sensitive to those kinds of things.
Yeah, if you save 80% of the cost involved here, who gets fired, right? Who gets laid off?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Which is too bad, because that's not really the right way to look at it. I mean, there's so much more we can always be doing in terms of supporting modernization and better information to power grids or to improve safety or whatever else. And
yeah, we have some things we're doing right now with SAP HANA, and one of the things that happens often is that when you have that integration platform, it saves a lot of data processing time for GIS data, right? And one of the things that the first thought is, oh, well, if we save all this data processing time, well, then what are my 7 guys going to do? And the idea is, well, they'll do the work that really are meant to do. They'll do the work that really pays the bills. So I think that's a very similar kind of situation that the folks that are in heavily in the design process are facing the same kind of idea. What will you do with me then? Well, maybe you can do the work that you were hired to do, actually.
Yeah.
Instead of putting out fires all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wasn't leaving, by the way. I just turned on the lights.
No, that's okay. It kind of freaked me out for a minute. I was like, Dennis, where are you going? Anyway, hey, so let's turn our attention quickly, just for a minute, just to different people who are watching. Got Mike Eggenberger and Keith Russell and Jeremy Connor, Danny Petrucca. Thanks, Danny, for coming. Diana Herbst, and a host of others who haven't put their name in. So if you haven't already put a comment in that telling me where you're watching from, please do that. That would be a great thing for us. And I want to ask any of those who are watching, if you have questions for Dennis, he is the expert on this, and this would be a great place to ask those questions, because I'm going to ask a couple more questions, but I'd love to include you here. So really quickly, you and I talked about some. Maybe tell me, what are the range of products that you folks are concentrating on now, right? What are your flagship products, and what other products do you have that are really gaining traction?
Sure, absolutely. The product that is kind of the main flagship is our distribution design offerings, which support primarily gas and electric, and there where we've really done the most investment in infrastructure. We do have a substation design suite, and the substation market is just really a big market. And substations, everybody probably knows what they look like. They see the gray galvanized fence and say, what is that ugly back thing? That ugly thing, and I don't want that in my backyard, kind of thing.
Right.
But they are very important structures, and obviously very important for delivering energy to our grid and to the consumers. And there is just so much going on in the substation industry, particularly with renewables and with all the new transmission lines that are being built, and there will only be more, particularly if the infrastructure bill goes through anywhere close to as proposed right now. So we're doing quite a bit of work there with 3D modeling and taking that world from the old 2D side of the AutoCAD based drafting and those kinds of things to true models. And those are interesting because you've got all these 3D components. You've got the clashing. It's almost like a factory, but there's obviously a heavy network and component to that too, in terms of modeling the networks and all the protection and controls and those kinds of things. And of course, they are tied to the transmission and distribution networks. So when organizations really want to model all their infrastructure, they really need to be looking at modeling their substations and the associated networks. Of course, we do a lot of work with Esri's utility network. So we've been taking our platforms and really starting to merge the world of distribution and substations together, and starting to do some common things with those platforms. So we can start doing more and more advanced asset management work, geospatial integration, network model integration, all the way through the substation. And so that's where we're putting a lot of energy right now. And I know it sounds very techy, and it is, but it's really got some exciting implications as you start to model grids and different kinds of grids than people have been modeling for the last 100 years.
Yeah, you're saying something there that I want to pull on. So what are those exciting implications, just in real terms?
Well, I think the big thing is just what we talked about. The design productivity goes way up. But the thing that is really kind of exciting, with improving design, you can get that productivity. You can if you have lots of designers, you're going to save millions of dollars. But if you can make your designs better and really support the construction process, then you're going to save tens of millions of dollars. I mean, it really makes a fundamental difference if you have a design that has fewer change orders, that can really tie into your supply chain, that can support advanced asset management. You're really, really starting to do something fundamentally different than just building something and turning it over to somebody.
Yeah.
There are just a lot of, it's right now it's pretty stovepiped. I mean, there's just a lot of information flows that stop at the end of construction. And they actually stop at the end of design. They get printed out and they support construction, which is, in 2021, that's kind of a terrible thing. So there's a lot that we can be doing to take that much further.
Yeah, I see that. And in terms of money, you said something about money and the cost of things. Do you see the infrastructure money coming from the government as something that will, really bolster this economy, this renewables and transmission economy that we're growing so fast?
Yeah, I think there are two aspects to it. I mean, one, there's just a lot of raw investment that the government is looking to do. But the other aspect of it that I find is kind of interesting, and I really prefer it, is that they're providing tax incentives or offering to provide tax incentives to free up outside money to really start investing in the transmission of renewables into population centers. So when you get the market excited and the market investing, I think that's when the best thing happens. Government can stimulate, but so let's face it, our economy is still what drives our livelihoods. And so I think on both fronts, it will be doing good things. We want to make sure we don't overdo it, obviously, and there's only so much we can get done in a period of time, but I think it has a lot of good things happening. So.
Well, if you gain 80% efficiency in some part of that system, you're going to get more done, right?
Absolutely.
I hate to keep pulling on that 80% number, because I know that that's the top end, but still, it's instructive to know that there are those efficiency gains when you roll out technology that's integrated like this.
Absolutely. But again, I think, and that's a big dollar savings, but the big dollar savings will come on the construction side.
Okay.
When you can really build things and build them with confidence, with fewer changes in the field. Changes not only impact the costs, but they impact the ability to get something done on time. And that particularly for a utility that is feeding their rate base with their investments, you want to have that be very timely as you can. So it will really hopefully help the overall financial performance of the utility when they're doing that.
Okay, that's a laudable goal. So I got another question here from Danny. So Danny, thanks for engaging today, and I want everybody to take a lesson from Danny because he's a good engager. So how does Dennis feel about the ubiquity of paper construction packages being used in the field by most utilities? Do you think that having digital design and digital GIS makes sense when there's a whole mound of paper in the middle? What do you think?
Danny, great question. There are a lot of interesting things. So, there are the old guys like us, and we aren't getting any younger from day to day. The construction industry is so interesting, and it's kind of near and dear to my heart because my first jobs were actually in construction. My dad had a small family plumbing business, and I carried his toolbox when I was in single digits. And, so I've worked in that for a long time. And when we look at construction and construction workers, there is a big change that's happening. The older construction workers are not getting replaced with young construction workers. And so they really have to be looking very, very seriously at productivity improvements and the ability to use devices, take them out to the field, to do scans, to look at progress, all that. It's not a question of will it happen, it's just going to happen. And those mounds of paper will go away. I think it's just a question of time now, but I think the workforce will be driving that more than anything. I think these, younger workers that are going to be will be really doing professional caliber activities at construction sites. It's going to happen. I just don't see how it can't happen.
Yeah, that same dynamic, Dennis. That same dynamic exists in the EAM space. And in my day job, when I'm not sitting behind this microphone, my bag is full of buried infrastructure, right? And we have the same problem there, where you have a lot of buried infrastructure that maybe Ed, who's getting ready to retire, built, when he was first, out of high school. He knows exactly where that line is. He knows where the valve is. He knows where the hydrant is. He knows, where everything is on that line. And when he goes to perform maintenance on that buried infrastructure, he doesn't need a lot of technology to make that happen. But Jared, who's 2 years out of high school, who didn't build it in the first place, he needs more information, and he expects it to be on his phone. Not only does he need it, but he expects it to be on his phone. So I think the same problem exists in asset management that exists in construction. This move from paper to digital provides incredible gains in productivity, but also bridges the gap in our aging workforce as well.
Yeah, it's a necessity. And, I remember one of my first excavation projects I worked with, this was while I was in engineering school. It was at a pharmaceutical plant, and we were doing soil inspections and testing activities. And then they excavated a 50-foot trench. They encountered 48 buried lines, if you can imagine that. So about one per foot.
You're using a backhoe, right? Or a track hoe, something big with steel on the end of it.
Yes, for just a little bit, and then it went all manual. Yeah. But those are all things that nowadays they just have to go away, and you have to have that kind of information to exist. You talk about changes and delayed construction schedules, that will do it.
That's a good segue, because so keep that thought, and I just want to tell everybody thanks for being here today. I'm going to move on to the last question of the day for Dennis. But if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat, and we'll talk about them. But I always like to ask at the end of the interviews about what's out there on the horizon, what's out on the bleeding edge, either for you, Dennis, as a person, or for your company, or the software tools that you create. And the reason that I think it's a good segue, what you're talking about, is because I look a lot at augmented reality locating videos, things. I have a friend on LinkedIn who has a company training people to do that. His name's Tyler Bristow. Look him up. He has centerline mapping. He's a great guy, and he trains people to use these AR tools in locating. And so AR is one of those technologies that is on the horizon out there. It's being used now, but I don't think a lot of people do use it. So for your niche, for intelligent design, what is out there? What's out there on the bleeding edge?
Oh, that's great. In fact, what you just mentioned is a really fun one, because once you create a 3D model, like we do with an intelligent design, all that is available. So we've had quite a few clients create their 3D designs, and then they've gotten their own HoloLens or other tools, and they can just take that design and they walk around and they can start looking at clashes. They can just do all kinds of things, and they're doing that now. And at the same time, it's basic, it's fundamental, but it's going to just continue to grow. And so there's a lot of that going on. The other thing closely related to that is LiDAR scanning. We're seeing this with our Australian clients in particular. They're just very keen on this, doing lots and lots of scanning, both on the distribution side and on the substation side of the electric business. And so we're really, one of the fun things we've been doing is taking this LiDAR scanning information and blending it into the design environment. So, so much of the assets, the asset base out there is legacy. There aren't good records, and the tools are getting so good now, we can continuously stream very large amounts of LiDAR data. We can be blending that LiDAR world with the digital 3D vector world. Mm-hmm. And we've been doing some really fun things with that. We've got some clients that are pretty progressive on it. And it really opens up the market to a much bigger problem space in terms of what we can solve. Yeah. So there's some really good stuff we're doing in that area too, just in that whole AR or LiDAR kind of thing. So that's one fun area.
That's nice. It opens up the whole brownfield area, right? You have a substation that's 50 years old. You don't have any digital plans for that. You got to find a way to make that happen. Find a way to make a digital model of that you can actually use for something, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly right. So that's one very kind of interesting area, very very practical area too, because it solves some real problems. I mean, there's fun and there's practical, and this one happens to be fun and practical, which is really good. I mentioned the changes in networks. So as we look at renewable energy and all those kinds of things, networks are fundamentally changing. And we've been doing a lot of work with modeling networks and Esri's utility network, and the whole fact that we're moving to distributed energy resources, and all that is changing the overall network topology. And so moving that into the design space is an important thing that we've been monitoring for quite some time. We've got a lot of the capabilities to do it, but we aren't seeing a big demand too. So if anybody is out there and wants to chat with me about that one, it's just a favorite topic. I would really welcome some open discussions for anyone who wants to reach out.
Well, let's do something more with that from our side. We can. I'd love to foster a conversation about that. That'd be great. Yeah. So Dennis, anything out there for you personally? Like, you have any big goals? I'll put out there to the universe right now, and to everybody watching, which is only 10 people at this point, but hopefully there will be a lot of people that watch this as a recording. But I'm really wanting very much to through hike the Appalachian Trail when I'm 60. So that's 2 summers from now. And so I'm hoping that I can get my ducks in a row so that I can do that. You have anything big on your horizon?
I think every year is big. I have 7 children and 17 grandchildren. And so it's really quite an adventure to just go out and see them, watch them grow. And we always do a lot of fun activities. And I have a big birthday coming up this year, so we are planning a major event with that family and our extended family in the mountains of Tennessee, in the Smoky Mountains. So we've rented a house that sleeps over 50 people.
Wow, good for you. Good for you.
That would be a blast to get everybody together. So family-related things are kind of big for me. So.
That's nice. You got me beat by so many. I'm expecting my 6th grandchild in June, and I love being a grandpa. What a great thing it is.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So.
Dennis, it's been great to meet you and to get to know you, and I hope that we can continue to have good conversations. And if there's ever anything that we can do to help you, please let us know.
Yeah, thank you. And likewise, we've sure enjoyed working with Critigen. We're doing some projects together, and really appreciate the professional team and all the good things we've been able to do.
Well, I think like I said earlier, the reason I started doing this Graybeard Talks Geospatial is because my people are the best in the industry, and sometimes they're so good that they're squirreled away in their offices doing their work, and people don't know who they are. And I think they're very interesting. Besides being super, super competent, they're very interesting as people as well. And so I'm trying to expose some of our people to the industry, as well as work together with partners to do the same thing. So we appreciate your partnership, and we look forward to more work with you guys in the future.
Great. That sounds great. Thanks so much.
You bet. And have a great day, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Sounds good. Take care.
Thanks everybody for joining today. Come back again every Thursday, 4:00. And if you don't know about my clubhouse room, I'm one of the founding members of the Geospatial Connections Clubhouse, or club on the Clubhouse. And every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern, we have a club about some interesting geospatial topic that connects everybody. It's a great networking event. If you're not on Clubhouse, DM me and I'll tell you how to get on. All right. Thanks again, Dennis. We'll talk soon.
Take care, everyone.
Ciao.
Bye.